an advertising campaign by a beer manufacturer is designed to stimulate demand for their product. So it's interesting. They use the sports stars. They use, attractive or popular spokespeople and so forth to promote their product, hoping that it will stimulate a preference or improve create a change in people's taste for that product and so forth. It's interesting because there's really not a lot of data and so forth that supports that one beer tastes better in an appreciable manner, especially with a lot of the domestic beers. It's interesting. I had some, not that I'm probably digressing a little bit here, but I had a former student of mine that worked as a waitress at Outback, and she told me, Lindsay, when it gets late and we run out of one kind of beer and so forth, we just substitute another kind of beer and nobody knows the difference. Maybe that's not the case with the better beers like Heineken or Beck's or something like that. But I know with like Bud and Miller and so forth, apparently that's done. But again, they're trying to create a change in perception or taste and preference, okay? So that's another one of the 6 characteristics. This is interesting, a change in the price of substitutes and complements. So as the price of substitutes decrease, demand for goods fall, okay? So for example, if the price of a US automobile increases, the demand for a comparable foreign automobile will increase. That makes sense, right? So if the price of a substitute decreases, demand for goods that compete with it or substitutes for it will fall. On the other hand, if the price of a substitute increases, the demand for a substitute product will rise. Now, on the other hand, complements and so forth, this is an interesting thing. So as the price of complements decrease, the demand will rise for the complements. So let's say, well, think about this. With peanut butter and jelly, as the price of peanut butter falls, the demand for jelly increases, okay? Because basically people are more likely to buy peanut butter, and jelly is used as a complement or associated product with peanut butter and so forth to make sandwiches and so forth. So, basically peanut butter goes down, demand for jelly goes up. Another one, peas and carrots, like if you ever saw Forrest Gump or whatever like that, if people are more likely to buy carrots, if the price of peas are going down, that's an example of another complement or whatever, okay? So price, there's basically this inverse relationship. As price of complements decrease, demand rises for the complementary product. On the other hand, if the price of a complement like peanut butter and jelly were to rise, the demand for peanut butter were to rise, the demand for jelly or honey and so forth would diminish or fall. And here's another thing. This is interesting, and we're going through another shocking event now. So a change in future expected prices. Basically, one reason why there was a run on toilet paper at the market and so forth is in crises like COVID-19 or like Hurricane Katrina or 9/11 and so forth, basically people fear shortages, and so it increases the demand for the product and so forth. They're expecting not only for there to be supply shortages, but for basically prices to increase. Here's what I'll tell you. The Meijer and so forth, that one of the stores that we go to Meijer, Trader Joe's, and to Costco, but we saw a big difference in Meijer's behavior as a retailer post COVID-19. Prior to that, they had a new Kroger being built adjacent to them, in Spring River Pike, and they were offering all kinds of sales, $10 here, $5 here, and so forth, all kinds of online coupons to get you to shop there. Well, all that went away. In fact, when I went in there on Sunday and so forth, there wasn't a single item in the frozen food section that was on sale. So basically, there's a situation where this panics ensued and so forth like that. They realized people are less sensitive about prices. Now, I'll talk more about some of these topics kind of relate to price elasticity, but I'm not going to quiz you on that because there's just simply not enough time to educate that. However, you'll see some questions next week on price elasticity of demand and price elasticity of supply. Okay, so here's another example. If we believe the price of a good is going to fall, a 2010 automobile, let's say, or 2019 automobile after 2020 models are released, we're expecting those 2019 automobiles to fall. Okay, we may delay in purchasing to take advantage of a future lower price on that 2019 car or 2020, 2021. So current demand decreases, even though future demand may increase and so forth if we anticipate a reduction in future prices, okay? Now, the last one and so forth is emergence of new substitutes or departure of existing substitutes. So as new technologies emerge, this is really kind of related to innovation. Basically, as new technologies emerge, more price sensitivity lowers the demand for older products that do not possess the new technology, okay? So the demand for those products will fall, okay? And not just based on the price, but people are willing to pay more for the better product, okay? I mean, heavens, I saw situations when I was in the fireplace garage door business when some of the new technologies came out on gas fireplaces and so forth. We couldn't almost give away some of the older products we had. We couldn't even sell them for really what we paid for them. So we had to like deep discount them below our cost to get rid of stuff. And in some cases and so forth, we just wrote it off of inventory and demolished the product and so forth because it was obsolete, okay? Diminishing competition will reduce the number of substitutes in the market and provide consumers with less choices, thereby reducing price sensitivity and stimulating demand for products. So basically, let's say if there's less competitors in a certain market, let's say if that Kroger store were to close, if they say, hey, we don't want to be involved with that and associated with Springboro Pike anymore. Or give you an example and so forth from a world that some of you are familiar with. When Good Sam Hospital closed up close to Grandview last year and so forth like that, that increased the demand for services at Grandview Hospital and so forth for that community. And also basically gave them greater power over the prices they could set with demand increases. They had more power to basically charge more for that product as demand rose, okay? So basically make sure you can give me three of those. And so forth. And here's some examples, of them and so forth. Make sure you can list three of them. I don't need you to explain them, just list three of them for the quiz. It's worth 1.5 points. I'm going to go over the same thing with supply now. We'll talk about elasticity again on Thursday. I'll probably talk a little bit about inflation on Thursday as well. Go down here. Okay, let's see. Okay, so think about this and so forth. Supply and so forth, that's how we believe as producers, okay? So think about this. I'm more likely to work a job that pays me $11 an hour than I am that pays me $8.55 an hour. I can think of when I was at PUC and we tried to get people to work at graduation. The minimum wage in California at that time was $11 an hour. Heavens, we couldn't get students that would want to show up for $11 an hour, but to get them out of bed to help with parking and so forth and with the graduation event, we were able to stimulate some activity and so forth by paying them $15 an hour. Because as the price rose, people are more likely to produce, okay? People are more willing to work overtime if prices are rising or wages are rising, okay? So think about this as an application there. First of all, supply is how we behave as producers, okay? We're all producers, and as prices rise or stakes rise, we're more willing to produce or produce more, and so there's a direct relationship between price and output, okay, as opposed to an inverse relationship with demand. In other words, with demand, as prices fall, we're more willing to buy more of a product. As prices rise, we're more willing to produce more or produce, period, a product or provide a service, okay? So think about that for Thursday's quiz, okay? Okay, so here's some examples. Again, here I want you to think about three factors that cause supply to shift. So here's an example. The supply increases or shifts when there's an increase in one of these factors that I'm getting ready to meet. On the other hand, if the supply curve was out here and there was a decrease in one of these things, basically supply would sort of shift to the left or decrease. So what would cause this? Basically, supply is influenced by these 5 factors. Prices of factors of production or inputs, so or taxes, subsidies, regulatory expenses. As price increases, supply is reduced, okay? The supply curve shifts. As price reductions increase supply and so forth, basically the factors of production that it takes to produce a product and so forth are influenced by that, okay? Second one and so forth is expected future prices of outputs. And this is what's happening now. If producers are expecting prices to rise soon, supplies may be increased just in time to hit a trigger of the higher price, or it may be decreased if prices are expected to fall by the time the product hits the street. So here's the thing. What we saw, and this really kind of relates to demand as well. When the oil market anticipated a reduction in demand for their oil products and so forth, basically they cut supply, they reduced supply and so forth to give them more control over future prices, but they also decreased price and so forth because people were more sensitive to prices of gasoline, and people were also demanding less gas because people aren't driving as much. Okay. Another one is innovation or technology changes. As if there's process improvement changes, people basically that lowers costs and increases supply. It may reduce the supply of or extinguish the supply of an existing product, create a whole new supply curve for an existing product. Okay. A change in the number of suppliers. A higher number of suppliers will increase the level of supply. A decrease in the number of suppliers. In other words, if there's more restaurants and so forth, that'll increase the level of supply. If there's less restaurants, that will reduce the level of supply. Okay, and we've seen that happen. This kind of interrelationship, which I'm going to go over next week, between supply and demand. Demand has diminished extensively because of COVID-19 and the restrictions in hours and so forth. And that's shrunk the number of suppliers, and it's as a result of basically an interrelationship with what's going on with demand as well. Supplier prices of substitutes, because if a company produces multiple products and another product in the portfolio is able to command a higher profitability, the firm may choose to decrease supply of an existing product to capture higher profits with the other part of their portfolio. We see that happen. So why do I want to make a 30% margin on one product? Let's say rice, if I can make a 50% margin on quinoa, or, manufacturing that or producing that, okay? Or, to give you an example, think even with you guys, if I've got 2 gigs and one of them pays me $50,000 a year for work that I do, and another one's willing to pay me $75,000 a year for the same amount of work, I may want to keep both and so forth, but I may juggle it and so forth, where I'm doing more on the one and less of the other, or eliminating the other one that pays less. We see that happen all the time. I mean, I have multiple gigs that I do, and sometimes I say, hey, I can do this and this for you, but I can't do that because I have other competing things that pay better or that or interest me more and so forth on an intangible level. So I want to make sure we know this for the quiz. Let's make sure I go over the quiz topics with you. So make sure you know what demand measures in terms of how we behave, and what supply measures in terms of how we behave. So remember, I talked about demand is about how we behave as one thing, and supply measures how we behave as another thing. Okay. Let's see. Know the relationship between price and quantity demanded, and the relationship between price and quantity supplied. Okay, those are 2 separate questions that'll be worth 1 point apiece. I want you to state the law on demand and basically provide an example of how you utilize it. So to get the 2 points and so forth, you not only need to state the law of demand, but give me a practical application of how you would utilize it in your life, okay? Then I want you to list 3 factors that cause the entire demand curve to shift. I want you to state the law of supply and provide an example of how you would utilize that as a supplier or producer. I gave you a hint to one of the earlier questions, by the way, right there. And then I want you to list 3 factors that cause the entire supply curve to shift. So law of demand and law of supply are worth 2 points. The factor questions are worth 1.5 points, like a half point for each factor. And the other 2 questions I mentioned are worth 1 point apiece. Okay. All right, 3 questions that I mentioned are worth 1 point apiece. And beautiful people, I think that does it for today. Let me see if I've got anything in the chat before I let you guys off. Give me just a second. Okay. Any questions in the chat? Okay. All right. God bless you guys. Have a good rest of the day, and I'll see you on Thursday. Okay. Okay. And check out the syllabus that I posted on RenWeb if you've got questions about the changes in the rest of the course, and then of course the course paper rubric. God bless you. Have a good rest of the day. Bye-bye. Yeah. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Yeah.